All right, buckle up everybody, because today we are diving deep into some ancient mysteries. We're talking about the Book of Noah, but not the Noah's Ark story you might know. This one's a bit different.
It is. We're looking at the Book of Noah that's found within the Book of Enoch, an ancient Jewish text that adds a whole other level to those biblical stories.
So are we talking about stuff that was, like, super controversial back in the day?
Absolutely, you hit the nail on the head. Think of the Book of Enoch like the director's cut, full of stuff that wasn't included in the traditional Bible. It was even considered, well, pretty much heresy for a while there.
Really? Like, people were not okay with this stuff.
Oh yeah, it was denounced and actually lost for a really long time, centuries in fact, because of its, let's just say, surprising content.
1,000 years lost.
Wow.
But someone eventually found it again, right?
Thankfully, yes. And it's been getting more recognition lately. It's amazing, though, that some early church fathers, really influential figures like Tatian and Irenaeus, they actually reference the Book of Enoch.
So clearly, there's something there. For this deep dive, we've got excerpts from the Book of Enoch itself, commentaries from experts who've spent years studying it, and even some glimpses into another text, the Book of Giants.
Which is really interesting because it kind of expands on some of the stories from Enoch, gives us more context for the world Noah was born into.
This is already blowing my mind. Okay, so before we even get to Noah, we need to understand the whole deal with the Book of Enoch, right?
Exactly. We're introduced to these beings called the Watchers, powerful angels who decided, hey, let's ditch heaven and head down to earth.
And things went a little sideways after that, right?
Let's just say they were not on their best behavior. They started sharing all this forbidden knowledge with humans, teaching them about magic and war. It was like opening Pandora's box, cosmic style.
And then there's the whole they had kids with human women thing, which I'm guessing didn't go over too well upstairs.
It was a big no-no. Their offspring were the Nephilim, these giants, who basically wreaked havoc on Earth. The text even describes the Earth crying out in pain because of all the wickedness going on.
Whoa, that sets a pretty intense scene. It sounds like the world was in rough shape even before the flood.
It definitely paints a picture of widespread chaos and corruption, which is the backdrop for Noah's arrival. And speaking of Noah, his birth, as described in the Book of Enoch, it's wild. Not your typical baby story.
Oh, tell me more.
Okay, picture this. A baby with skin whiter than snow, cheeks as red as a rose, hair like white wool, and eyes that were like beaming with light.
No, that's a pretty dramatic entrance.
Oh, and get this. When baby Noah opened his eyes, the entire house lit up.
Wow, that must have been something to see.
His grandfather, Methuselah, was definitely concerned, so he went on this journey to find Enoch, Noah's great-grandfather, who we know lived a super long life and was taken up to heaven.
So basically, Enoch was the go-to guy for wisdom back then.
Exactly. Methuselah needed to know what Noah's unusual birth meant. You can imagine him desperately seeking answers.
It makes you wonder, what would people back then have thought about a baby born like that? Good omen, bad omen, sign of the apocalypse.
That's a great question. It definitely shows that Noah's birth was a big deal. Something important was about to happen. Remember, they saw a strong connection between heaven and earth, so a baby like Noah, that was a sign.
It's almost like his birth was foreshadowing, like a cleansing or a fresh start was coming.
I like that, foreshadowing. And you're right, we have this remarkable baby, Noah, born into a world that's on the brink of disaster. The text says the earth itself is sinking, which is clearly a bad sign. And it's Noah, even as a kid, who really senses just how bad things are. The text says he cries out to Enoch for help, not just once, but 3 times.
Wow, that image is really striking, a child carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. Do you think Noah knowing about the coming destruction, do you think that played a role in him being chosen to, lead the new beginning?
That's a really interesting thought, and get this, his cries are heard, like all the way up in heaven. There's this voice from heaven that shakes the earth, makes Enoch fall to his face.
Whoa, it's like the universe itself is responding to what's happening.
Right, and it really shows Enoch's role here, like he's a bridge between heaven and earth. Remember, Enoch walked with God, he was taken up to heaven.
So Noah cries out,
Yeah.
heaven answers, and then Enoch starts having these crazy visions.
Oh, got it. And these visions, they're intense. Mountains crashing, trees being ripped up, the earth swallowing itself whole.
Yikes. Sounds like a preview of the flood.
A lot of scholars think so, yeah. But beyond just the spectacle, what do you think these visions tell us about, like the beliefs and worries of the people back then?
Well, there's definitely a sense of, judgment, right? That humanity has messed up big time. But it's not all doom and gloom, is it?
You're picking up on something important there. Enoch's visions, they have this dual nature.
Well?
warning of judgment, but also a sliver of hope for those who are righteous, a promise of a new start.
So that's where the idea of the Ark of the Flood comes in, right? The visions are showing the destruction, but also that there's a chance for renewal.
Exactly. The Book of Noah adds these extra layers to the flood story we all know. We see what leads up to it, why it's so significant, not just some random event.
What strikes you about the connection between Noah and Enoch? Why do you think Noah turned to him?
It's really fascinating how much emphasis there is on family history, ancestral wisdom. Noah, facing this huge crisis, he turns to his ancestor who had that direct link to God, someone with that special knowledge.
It's like he's reaching back through time for guidance, tapping into that ancient wisdom.
I love that way of putting it. It shows that even with these impossible challenges, there's this chain of knowledge, guidance being passed down to help navigate the unknown.
So we've got Enoch troubled by these visions, but they show both judgment and hope. What does he do with all this? How does he react?
Enoch, he's overwhelmed by what he sees. So he decides to, step in on behalf of humanity. He doesn't want total annihilation, so he prays that at least some people are spared.
He's like, hold on, God, there's got to be another way. Let's save something here.
That's a great way to put it. He pleads with God for mercy, asks for a plant of the eternal seed to be saved, a lineage that will keep that covenant with God going.
So even with this huge judgment coming, there's still that spark of hope, recognizing that not all of humanity is lost.
Yeah.
What exactly does plant of the eternal seed mean, though?
Great question. It likely refers to a specific group, those who stayed righteous, who would survive to carry on the best of humanity. It's not just about physical survival, but also the moral and spiritual core of humanity.
It really changes how we see the flood, right? Not just punishment, but also this transformation, a chance to start over.
Exactly. It makes you think about how we see judgment and renewal today. How do we deal with the consequences of what we do, but still hold on to that possibility of change and growth? What would the plant of the eternal seed look like now?
Those are big questions. Makes you think about how we react to challenges in our own lives. Do we give in to despair or look for chances to learn, grow, and maybe even plant seeds for something better?
It's a timeless problem, isn't it? And it's amazing how an ancient text like this still resonates today. Makes us think about our own choices and what we're responsible for in the face of, uncertainty and possible upheaval.
So we've got Noah chosen to lead this new beginning, getting ready for this storm. But before we jump into the flood itself, we need to talk about the Watchers, those fallen angels who kind of started this whole mess.
Right, the Watchers. Yeah, they really messed things up, didn't they? So what happens to them? How does their story end?
I'm kind of on the edge of my seat here. What happens to them?
Well, they know about the flood that's coming. They realize what's about to happen, and they are scared, like really scared.
Yeah, I bet. They're about to face the consequences of what they did, and those consequences are pretty serious.
Absolutely. They suddenly realize just how bad they messed up, and they're desperate, so they turn to Enoch. They beg him to talk to God for them, to put in a good word.
So they're hoping Enoch can smooth things over with God, get them out of trouble.
They want some kind of mercy, some leniency from the coming judgment. And Enoch, being Enoch, he agrees to write down their plea and take it to God.
He's like their cosmic lawyer. But does it work? Does God listen?
There's a twist. While Enoch is writing down the Watcher's plea, he also gets a vision of what will actually happen to them.
Uh-oh. Doesn't sound good.
Yeah, it's not a pretty picture. It's made clear that even with Enoch's help, they can't escape what they did. There are consequences.
Like some kind of cosmic justice.
Exactly. It reinforces this idea that even with God's mercy, there's an order to the universe, a balance that has to be maintained. Their actions messed up that balance, and there's a price to pay.
Okay, so the Watchers are facing a pretty grim fate. Noah's getting ready for the flood. And we see this theme of like cause and effect on a grand scale. Now, what about the Ark itself? Does the Book of Noah give us any more details about how it was built, like some kind of blueprint from heaven?
It's interesting. The book focuses more on what the ark symbolizes rather than giving us step-by-step instructions on how to build it. It's not so much about the physical construction, but more about what it represents in this cosmic story.
So no carpentry lessons, but more about understanding the ark's place in this whole idea of humanity starting over.
Exactly. The ark is like this vessel of purification, a safe haven amidst the chaos. It's not just escaping the water, it's about being cleansed, reborn, coming out of the flood transformed.
Like a giant floating baptism, a cosmic reset.
I love that. The Ark is this sacred space where the seeds of a new world are safe from the corruption of the old. It's like a miniature version of the righteous people, carrying the hope for a better future.
So who gets to ride on this cosmic lifeboat? Just Noah and his family, or are there others deemed worthy of a spot on this vessel of renewal?
We've got Noah, his family, and of course, representatives of the animal kingdom. But it's not just a random assortment of animals. There's a deliberate selection, an emphasis on purity and righteousness.
So it's not just about survival of the fittest. It's about preserving those who are morally and spiritually sound, right? It's about carrying forward the best of humanity and nature, those that deserve a second chance.
That's it, exactly. The Ark isn't just a random group of survivors, it's carefully chosen. It's about what is valuable, pure, and essential for the new world after the flood.
And the flood itself, how does the Book of Noah describe it? Is it just pure divine wrath, or is there a deeper meaning to this cataclysmic event?
It's definitely terrifying and destructive, but the book presents it as more than just punishment. It's a necessary part of this larger cosmic cycle of creation and destruction, wiping the slate clean, so to speak, making way for a new beginning.
So not just vengeance, but a cosmic reset button, a chance to start fresh.
Exactly. The floodwaters are like cleansing agents, washing away the past, all the corruption and violence. It's dramatic, sure, but it's necessary for renewal and rebirth.
So the Book of Noah gives us this powerful image of transformation. It's not just a survival story, it's a redemption story, showing how hope endures, even in the face of overwhelming destruction.
And it reminds us that even in the darkest times, there's always a possibility for rebirth, a chance to come out of the wreckage changed, ready to build a better world.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. We explored the Watcher's story, Noah's birth, Enoch's visions, God's judgment and mercy, and the meaning behind the ark and the flood. What are some of the key things you want our listeners to take away from all this?
I think it's clear that the Book of Noah is so much more than just a story about a guy building a boat. It's a complex story woven into this bigger picture of ancient beliefs about angels, giants, divine judgment, and in the end, this lasting hope for a righteous future. It's a story that has resonated for centuries and continues to speak to us today.
It definitely makes us think beyond the surface level of these familiar stories. Dig deeper into the meaning, the timeless questions that these ancient texts wrestle with, and how these stories might shape how we see the world and our place in it.
Absolutely. And that brings us to a final thought for you to ponder. If you had to build a metaphorical ark today, what would you preserve? What seeds of hope would you carry into the future? What principles would guide your choices?
That's a powerful question to consider. We hope this deep dive into the Book of Noah has given you some new insights, sparked your curiosity, and maybe even inspired you to reflect on your own values and hopes for the future. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep into the fascinating world of these ancient texts.